This is Residence 104.4 FM. Flipping marvellous. How are you? I'm Nick Hennegan, coming at you with Literary London here on Resonance and, of course, on bohemianbritain.com. And we're going back to West London. Are we? Yes, we are. And we're going back to West London for the Chiswick Book Festival. As I've mentioned before, Chiswick is arguably the most writerly place in London, according to one of the big newspapers. But I do like loads of events that they've had. Torrin Douglas is a lovely man. He's arranges this whole thing, and he's got a brilliant Joe, who's a brilliant booker of writers. And the only thing she does do wrong is she hasn't booked me yet. Oh yeah, I'm going to have 2 books out by the time this happens next year. You listening, Douglas? Yeah. Calm. Okay, sorry, it's the Edinburgh Fringe that does that to you. So it's a marvellous event. And one of the highlights for me is always the Chiswick writers get together, where a bunch of writers who all live in Chiswick and have all had books published come and talk about their books. And as you may know if you heard last week, they only have 2 minutes or else Joe hoots them off. So let's go right back to the George IV pub on Chiswick High Road for the Chiswick Book Festival Local Writers Soiree.
Okay, well, welcome back everybody, and I hope you're now ready for the second scintillating round of entertainment for this evening. So let's get the show on the road by welcoming to the stage, talking about her new novel, A Stranger in Baghdad, Elizabeth Loudon.
A Stranger in Baghdad tells the story of an English woman called Diane who shortly before World War II falls in love with an Iraqi doctor called Ibrahim and goes back to live with him in Baghdad in his old house on the Tigris with his extended family. And at that time, Iraq was ruled by a British-installed monarchy, and Diane soon got a job as a nanny in the royal household. Also at that time, the king's allegiance was shifting towards Germany, away from Britain, and Diane was asked to spy on him for the British, which she did happily. The consequences of that decision follow her, shadow her for decades to come, and A Stranger in Baghdad tells that story. Ibrahim and Diane go on to have 3 children, and they live through the end of the monarchy, when Iraq becomes a republic, and the rise of the Ba'ath Party and ultimately Saddam Hussein. Diane is never fully trusted again. The question is always, is she really Iraqi or is she British in her heart? And ultimately, her whole family will pay a terrible price for her divided loyalties. The theme of the book is loyalty, betrayal, allegiance, and identity. You may wonder why I wrote it. I'm not Iraqi, but I did live in Baghdad, and I was very moved, and I vowed I would never forget what I witnessed there. I'm absolutely thrilled that the American University in Cairo Press published it in their Hooper fiction imprint, and even more thrilled that it's received extraordinary reviews from Arab critics, journalists, and Arab readers. We might all think that we know what Baghdad is like, but they really know. So I'm especially pleased about that. And I hope that if you read it, you too will feel that you went back to Baghdad as it was before the wars and the invasions. Thank you.
Okay, next up, I'm delighted to welcome James Tellison, talking about his humorous anthology, Schools Out, Truants, Troublemakers and Teachers' Pets.
Thank you. Schools Out is an anthology of the school reports of the rich and famous, from Elizabeth I to Boris Johnson. It's a pocket-sized archive of what teachers thought of our greatest actors, our greatest comics, our greatest authors, and politicians, which was, frankly, often not very much. Queen Victoria's grandson, for example, was described as apathetic with an abnormally dormant mind. Jon Snow was told he set himself consistently low standards, which he failed to meet. which makes Schools Out a sort of eulogy to the caustic wit of teachers, which would now frankly be a forbidden art. Who would now dare write, "He answers questions parrot fashion"? Unfortunately, it's a parrot with a bad memory. What modern-day careers officer would risk saying, frankly, his only chance of getting into university is by breaking and entering? So, is Schools Out a serious book? No, not really. But as the Chiswick calendar said, it does put some of the laugh-out-loud reports into a social context. And Harry Mounts, the editor of The Oldie, who gave it 10 out of 10 very kindly, said, "The book is an utter delight to find that the great and the good were not so great and good at school." So if you fancy a peep into the early years of the famous, Schools Out's for you. If you fancy a little trip down memory lane triggered by these school reports, it may also be for you. And it's also the perfect size for your Christmas stocking. This book will sit proudly in any loo, in any house.
I think sitting proudly in any loo is a good place to stop. And it reminds me, my grandfather had a school report that said, "Sydney has slept peacefully through the term." Joy. Anyway, so next up, we have someone who's done this very event before. So hopefully that means she's enjoyed it, as she's coming back again. Please welcome to the stage, talking about her thriller, Our Man in Kuwait, Louise Burfitt Dons.
Good evening, or should I say, Masa al-Khair, because my book is set in the Middle East. Obviously people know about the Gulf War of 1990, but few people know about the dress rehearsal 30 years before, when Iraq first threatened to invade Kuwait, and this forms the backdrop to my story. I was born in Kuwait, raised there. I was 7 at the time of these events. So I very much wanted to write a book that encapsulated or captured the sort of essence of that era, not just the 50-degree boiling heat in the summer, but also the lifestyle, the black tie dinners at the club, the fishing trips, the swimming galas. So this book is as much a historical timepiece as it is an espionage thriller. But at that time, the Middle East was a hotbed of spies because we were at the height of the Cold War. In 1960, Ian Fleming came to Kuwait, as did Kim Philby. So there's a lot of fact behind the story. And the story revolves around Gordon Carlyle. He's an employee of the Kuwait Oil Company who unwittingly gets dragged into the hunt for an undercover agent, Soviet agent, who's been operating outside the expat community of Ahmadi. I loosely modelled this on my father, who had a huge menagerie of snakes and scorpions and had many desert adventures, including one with Ian Fleming. I've just optioned the film rights to this. Very exciting. And like Elizabeth, my book is being translated into Arabic and being published in the Middle East next year.
Next up, ahead of his event at Hogarth's House on Monday, please welcome to the stage Chris Lethbridge, talking about his historical novel, which has had several titles, but the latest one is The King's Engraver, a tale of art, espionage and forgery.
Thank you. Yep, I'm Chris Lethbridge, Chiswick resident for over 20 years. I've recreated the past in TV documentaries, immersive events, and now in my historical novel, The King's Engraver. It's inspired by the extraordinary life of William Wynne Ryland, who is a star in the louche art world of Georgian London and Paris, a time when England and France are rivals not only in art, but war. So William's doing well. He's engraver to King George.
Speak into the microphone.
Okay, so William's doing well. He's engraver to George III and Queen Charlotte of Bridgerton fame. But he's ambitious. There's a fortune to be made. The question is, will his skills take him on a path to the scaffold or to a world of riches? Now, to liven things up, I want to change things. I'm going to ask you to indulge in a little bit of call and response. Your response is the King's Engraver. So, who is a master of light but tempted by the dark side?
The King's Engraver.
Whose brother is a highwayman?
The King's Engraver.
Who lives in Hammersmith but finds love in Lambeth? Who's not afraid of the East India Company?
The King's Engraver.
Who puts money on the wall with Angelica Kaufman, the most successful female painter of the day?
The King's Engraver.
Who's a target of the French Secret Service?
The King's Engraver.
Who has a French secret he can't tell his wife? Who cannot resist any get-rich-quick scheme?
My brother.
So if you're looking for a line, who are you going to call? So maybe one may smile and be a villain. You'll have to read the book to find out.
Now then, next up, with a guide to success in business, we hope, talking about his book, CEO Secrets, please welcome Dougal Shaw.
So I did have a carefully planned speech rehearsed and ready to go, but I've decided to stop that because something happened today, and I've got a story to tell you which sums up why I love being a local author, which is kind of the point of this event. I went recently to an optician for the first time in Ealing, very nearby, and I was there, and the lady was testing my eyes in the machine, and we were chatting away, and she said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a journalist, a business journalist. You might know the stories I do. Maybe CEO Secret series, you've heard of that. And I've turned it into a book actually, and she was really interested, asking questions. And I said, yeah, it's got big name CEOs like the bosses of LinkedIn or Monzo or Airbnb, all these founders, but small businesses as well. And I've turned this into a book, and she was fascinated. And I was quite touched. And I went home and I thought, I've got 10 copies of this book that the publishers give me to give away for free, but really you want journalists to get them to write reviews. I thought, no, I really want her to have a copy. So I went back, and she was absolutely thrilled. And she says, you know what, I'm going to read this book, and then I'm going to leave it for my customers to read when they're sitting down, and I'll have it near the window so people can see it. Now, what happened this week, just yesterday actually, was she called me up and she said, Dougal, you need to come back. And she gave me a massive list of customers. She persuaded to buy the book, and she was so proud to have me there as a local author. Selling books on Amazon and stuff, which is quite anonymous, and a book like mine isn't going to make a lot of money, but it's about these little connections you make, and especially the local ones really mean a lot. And if you want to check out the book here, you can also get it as well, or go to her opticians, which is I should mention her business, Eyes on the Common in Ealing.
Our next author he is local, although he's just come all the way from Cornwall, so he's looking windswept and interesting. Would you please welcome, talking about his book Zenor, Spirit of Place, Bob Osborne.
Yeah, I just had a 6-hour drive. This is like speed dating on steroids. I live in a village called Zenor, which is an ancient village. I relocated there 3 years ago under mysterious circumstances. The farmhouse where I live is where D.H. Lawrence formed a commune in the First World War. He came with a ragbag of occultists, other writers like Catherine Mansfield, his German wife, Friedrich von Richthofen. So I've been long researching Lawrence. Zen is also a centre of paranormal activity. So I wanted to answer the questions of what was the true nature of Lawrence's sexuality. He wrote Women in Love in the space that I now wrote this book. He was kicked out of Zen for spying for the Germans against the British establishment. I've deconstructed that whole story. After Lawrence left, Virginia Woolf came down. I've been interested in her for a long time as well. The party didn't stop there. Aleister Crowley performed black magic rituals on the Zen Moors, run a witches' coven, many of whom people I've named, which has annoyed some of the local witches. So that's been very successful. I printed a small edition of 666 copies. It's nearly sold out. Yeah, exactly. There's about 50 left, there's about 10 here. Now, I do want to plug the fact that I also made a documentary film based on the research in this book, which I did for fun. This has been shown 33 times at the Newland Film House. It's outsold Barbie and all the other Hollywood rubbish. It's won an award for the best documentary in Berlin. It's won an award in Hastings. It's also being shown free this Saturday at the Portobello Film Festival, headlining. Made this on a handheld camera, no budget. It's there. If anyone wants to go along, do. That's it.
Please welcome to the stage, next up, talking about her historical novel, The Napoleon of Egypt, writing as A.R. Duckworth. Please welcome Annette Duckworth.
Ancient Egypt. Don't you love it? All so mysterious and old. But the mystery does lose its lustre after a while, and we're left with a bit of disappointment, because it's very unlikely after all these thousands of years and masses of research already done to ever really understand these mysteries. If only there were other records, contemporary records, records that cover the same time period and the geographical area, to cast a bit more light on the subject. We have Hittite records, Syrian, Babylonian, Persian, Greek, but all of these are later than the really interesting period, the time when Luxor was built, the 18th dynasty, Egypt's empire building phase. Then the penny dropped for me. We do have such a record. The same geographical area, the same time period, the biblical record, written as history and religion, just as Egypt's records are written. So that should not disqualify it. What would we learn if we lined these two up together? So this is what I did. It's not mainstream Egyptology, as it is informed by a second source. But it is a valid interpretation of the sources we have. And I have written it as novels. This is my second. People's lives, a 3D picture, the whole story as best I can. Not just the two-dimensional picture we have from Egypt's masters of spin.
So, with some careers advice for children, and talking about her book, What Football Job Can You Do? Please welcome Emma Uhas.
Football is probably the world's most popular sport. 13.3 million people tuned into the Lionesses' World Cup final match in August, and Premier League matches are broadcasted to 800 million homes across 188 countries. That's a lot of fans. But what about those young players who want to make it to the top? Playing the game you love for your career is a dream come true. But of the children aged 9 and above who join football club academies, only 1% of them make it to play professionally. Many end up without a club or a football playing future by the age of 18. It's a very tough career choice. But I'm not here to fill your heads with doom and gloom. This is about discovering a future in football, whatever your talents. According to the FA, there are over 100,000 different jobs in football industry apart from being a player. And that's where my book, What Football Job Can You Do?, steps in. It's aimed at primary school children and explores some of the jobs children could consider if they want to be involved in the industry, but they don't make it or want to be a player. While primary school children may be too young to be offered careers advice, they're not too young to see what people do for jobs or what their futures could hold. This book is just a little bit of inspiration. I took advice from the football players and managers about what careers to cover for this young age group, and I interviewed an industry professional for every career I mentioned, such as coaches, physiotherapists, sports clothing designers, nutritionists, to name but a few. The book is also filled with games, facts and information about football, including the pathway to become a professional player and football for people with disabilities. It's a book for everyone, whatever their ability, ethnicity or gender, because football is for everyone. So, please get your copy of What Football Job Can You Do today. You never know, it may not be too late for you to live a football dream.
Next up we have, with her historical novel, The Lie, please welcome to the stage our not quite penultimate author, Mary Chamberlain.
Two sisters, one lie, and a devastating truth. Kathleen thought she knew her sister Joan, once a singing star of the 1940s and 50s, now living in penury in Streatham. But Kathleen's discovery of a dark family secret throws both their lives in turmoil, as Kathleen searches for a truth that Joan can never reveal, and Joan lives in fear of her past. Spanning women's lives in the last half of the 20th century and set in East Anglia, London and America, The Lie is a story of hope and despair, of love, loss, loyalty and betrayal. It is a family drama, but with a difference and a nasty sting in its tail. Who can we trust when the truth is treacherous and lies are the only thing of substance? And what happens when both are exposed? I published 11 books and was Virago's very first author. The Lie is my fourth novel to explore women's lives in the 20th century, following on from my debut, the international bestseller, The Dressmaker of Dachau. The Lie, according to Anna Mazzola, author of The Clockwork Girl, is a fascinating and deftly written novel. Interesting and provocative, said the Historical Novel Society. An emotional, heart-stopping read, according to Saskia Sargensen, author of The Twins.
Now we have our properly penultimate author of the evening, fresh in from Barcelona, talking about his thriller Agent in the Shadows. Please welcome Alex Gurlis.
So in a previous life I was a news editor at BBC Television News, and I see the 2-minute rule as Torrin's revenge. Because correspondents and reporters were always asking for more than 2 minutes, 2:15, can I make it 2:30? So I think there's obviously something behind this. Exactly 24 hours ago, and it was exactly 24 hours ago, we were in Barcelona, and we went to a very nice restaurant called Café Raffles, which is on the Ronde de Saint-Père. And the main reason why we're there, apart from the fact that it was very good, is that on the lower ground floor, there's a big mirror, probably the size of these two. And when I was shown into it, the mirror opens and it leads down to a secret room under the basement that's now a cocktail bar. But during the Spanish Civil War and after it, it was a secret headquarters for the Republicans, and it was a soup kitchen and a hospital. And for me, that just sums up the kind of authenticity and the real detail that I like to incorporate into my novels. So really what I'm trying to get across is that, sure, I'm writing fiction, and I don't pretend that fiction is anything other than fiction, and I don't go along, this might be controversial, with the phrase non-fiction novels, because it's either fiction or it's non-fiction. But I do like to bring in a strong degree of authenticity for two reasons. One is, Second World War, there are still people alive, so that's important. But also, what it does is it opens up a whole variety of storylines. I've had 11 novels published, and I'm just writing at the moment the first of a new series of 4. The 11 have sold nearly 600,000 altogether, one film deal, or option, to give it its correct phrase. And the one I'm talking about tonight is Agent in the Shadows, which was published earlier in the year, and is set in the Second World War in Lyon.
Our last author of the evening, talking about her book, which is a mix of both crime and a memoir. Please welcome Donna Freed, talking about Duplicity, My Mother's Secrets.
My name is Donna Freed, but I was born Rhoda Lindenmeyer. I was adopted through the same New York agency featured in the film Three Identical Strangers, where they experimented by separating twins and triplets at birth. That wasn't me. Perhaps another error on their part was to grant my unconventional parents an unprecedented third child to raise. It was my older sister who blurted out that we were adopted when I was 6, and after that, it was never mentioned in my family. After my tricksy but beloved by me adopted mother died, I started looking for my birth family. In the wake of her death, it seemed urgent enough to set aside my reservations, but I was still nervous about what I might uncover. Of course, I wanted to know where I was from, who I looked like, if there were any medical conditions, but I was anxious about the circumstances of my adoption. It could be rape, or incest, or some tawdry affair, and on top of that, they might not want to meet me. But what I discovered was that not only was I Scottish, and Catholic, and Swiss, and Jewish, but that my infamous con artist parents, their get-rich-quick scheme landed them and me in the form of the baby bump on front pages everywhere from New York to Aberdeen. So if you want to learn more, there are still some tickets available for my event with Chiswick Cinema on Sunday morning at 11:30, when Jeremy Vine will be interviewing me about the book. Thank you very much.
So if you'd like to know more, chiswickbookfestival.net. And that's it from me. Thank you for your attenzione. I shall be back next week. You can catch us on bohemianbritain.com, or of course here, Literary London. I better move out the way, on Resonance 104.4 FM.